At the moment, I was completely stunned. I thought I'd have a little bit of time to brace myself before seeing my mother. But there I was, caught like a deer in the headlights. I got up from my seat in front of the piano, and for a moment I just stood there, staring at her. For the life of me, I couldn't force words to the surface. And before I could even think about doing so, my mother ran over, jumping into my arms and hugging me tightly. "I don't believe it. After all these years, you're back. I never thought I'd see you again. And yet, in I stroll, and there you are, playing the same song. The song I heard you playing the night that you went missing. When I first walked into the room, I was in disbelief, seeing you sitting there, playing. I looked to your father, and the smile and the nod he gave me was all that I needed. It's really you, isn't it, Gabriel? Just look at you. I should have expected it. You look just like your brother," she said as she released the hug, placing her hands on my face and looking me over. "You do look a little bit more weathered than he did. You definitely need to get yourself a shave," she said, feeling the 5 o'clock shadow that had built up on my face, beginning to clutch and grasp at small segments of clothing around me. "Where have you been all of these years? And these clothes, they're so tattered." "Well, in the Yellow District, there isn't much for new clothing. You kinda gotta take what's available." "The Yellow District? Well, how in the world did you get out there?" "Well, it's a long story. Actually, it's one that I do want to share with you. But I want to wait for Michael to get here first. I'd rather not have to repeat myself over and over again. Once the whole family's together, I'll tell the story again, the same way I told Father. But I suppose there's no problem with talking before he gets here about some other things that are important. For example, there's someone I'd like you to meet. Well, actually, there's another person I'd definitely like you to meet, but most important on the list is here," I said, gesturing over to Emily, raising my hand in her direction. This is, well, Emily. She's basically the closest thing I have to family, at least since I went missing. Once again, it's a long story that I'll get into later, but I lost my memory after my disappearance, or during the disappearance. I'm not quite sure how to call it. But I wasn't always alone. Eventually, I did meet people that I could trust, and this is one of the first ones. This is my friend Emily. I've known her since, well, just a few months after I, disappeared. Hello, Mrs. Moon," Emily said, walking up slowly, seeming a bit nervous, which honestly was unusual for her. She didn't really tend to be nervous around people. She wore confidence like armor, regardless of the situation, even dealing with gun-toting lunatics. She always strided into any conversation and interaction as if she owned the room. It was actually kind of cute seeing her all nervous and worked up, a little bit flushed. "Well, hello there. So, you've been spending a lot of time with my son," my mother said, extending her hand towards Emily, who hesitantly reached out her own as they shook. "Yeah, we met up when we were just kids, and for most of the time since then, we've basically been together, give or take some sparse separations. It's a dangerous world out there. But I suppose being inside of the city is a little bit different than being in the Yellow District. Well, A long time ago I would have thought so, my mother replied. I never thought we could possibly be in any real danger inside of Newgate City, especially with our status. But on the day that Gabrial disappeared, I had to call that belief into deep question, and I spent a long time worrying. But I am happy to know that my son was able to find people he could trust. And if you're that important to his life, since his disappearance, then I'd of course like to get to know you, if that would be all right with you, my mother said, giving Emily a warm smile. Yes, Miss Moon. Jax, I mean Gabrial, Emily said, correcting herself in the moment. Jax? My mother said, cocking her head a bit and raising her eyebrow. Yeah, I'm sorry, Emily replied. It's just I've spent my whole life calling him Jax. Getting used to calling him Gabrial is gonna be a bit weird. I mean, I always knew that he had lost his memory. I never expected him to get it back, much less to find out that his mother and father own biotech. That's way off the mark from what I was expecting. But it definitely does explain a lot about him. Like how smart he is, the way he can learn basically anything, and how even when he was a kid he was able to build all of these insane gadgets. He must have learnt it all here. Well, yes. We have very good schools here in Newgate City, especially when you're wealthy, my mother said with a chuckle. Money never hurts for getting a good education. But as far as his tech savvy, that is all Gabriel. He far exceeded his peers in the subjects. He always did fairly well in school, but when it came to learning about technology and construction, he seemed to have a natural talent for it. I was actually blown away when I found out about his unique reading capabilities, his natural ability to read at an exceptional rate. It's unbelievable, actually, which probably helped greatly when it came to learning all of the things he did and getting into building and designing technological gadgets and things like that. I was always so proud of him. So, did those talents prove useful in the Yellow District? Useful? I'd say that's sort of an understatement. I can't tell you how many times that one of Jax's, Gabriel's, little gadgets have pulled my buns out of the fire. I'm ashamed to say that your son did spend a lot of time saving me. But I did do my best to return the favor. When I could, that is. So, when he asked to be part of the Black Label races, of course I volunteered to be part of his team. What? My mother shouted. Don't tell me you were part of that barbaric race! My mother said, a surprised and frightened expression on her face as she turned to me. Yeah, I definitely was a part of it. I was the winner, actually, which is what brought me here. But I thought you would have just regained your memory, that you figured out that you could just waltz up to the gate. There was no need to go through the Black Label races. Dear me, those races are so dangerous. It's a death march. Just the thought of my little boy in that. It's quite frankly terrifying. Don't worry about it, Ma. Remember, I spent my life in the Yellow District, so I toughened up quite a bit. I'm nowhere near as reserved as I used to be. You could say I'm a bit more stout. My mother took a deep, long breath, exhaling slowly in order to try to calm herself, her hand on her chest, feeling her heartbeat. I'd imagine probably trying to slow it down. Well, I'd imagine you'd have to be to survive out there.